You have to go work in a technology company and you have to use technology to build a business, because there is no problem that you cannot solve that technology won't be the leading edge of the sword. And by doing it, it's impossible to not make money. I dare you to find a technology business that has improved the world that has not made millionaires and centimillionaires and decamillionaires and billionaires. It's just not possible. I think that these next 15 to 20 years, it's pure alpha. Money will be falling from the sky.
In this video, there are excerpts from an interview of established VC and former senior exec at Facebook, Chamath Palihapitiya. In the interview organized by the Wharton Business School in Philadelphia, Chamath goes into detail on his current investing outlook. He hammers on the two areas he describes as the greatest investment opportunity of his lifetime. The two opportunities in question are in the sphere of energy generation and computing. He explains that the VC, institutional and government opportunities available for innovators in this space are almost limitless because of how important these problems have become. Not one to ask people to embark on fool's errands, Chamath explains the scale of the financial incentives for investors and developers in this sphere. He goes further to explain that even he will spend the next 20 years of his life in these sectors. Let's dive into his unique insight.
I'll give you two big trails of breadcrumbs that you should follow. And I've said this now a little bit redundantly, but I'll just keep saying it because it is the most important thing in the next 25 years. So I don't care what you like or don't like. You need to pivot your career to one of these two things. If you want to be successful. Number one is that the marginal cost of energy generation is going to zero. Okay? You have wars, you have death, you have all kinds of geopolitics that pivot around natural resources and energy. What happens to a peace dividend in the world when you don't have to fight for that stuff because you have abundant energy? And the cost of making that energy is effectively zero, and it has no impact into the ecology of the world. Well, we're about to find that out. And when you take the cost of energy to zero, now it unlocks all kinds of other problems that before were impossible to tackle because it would be too expensive. So that's trend number one. Trend number two is that we have shifted the ability to calculate and solve any computational problem away from a CPU to these things called GPUs. So think of some examples of these things. So for example, in life sciences today, you can go and now you don't need a scientist. So you don't need in vivo and in vitro speculation of drugs and molecules. You can just use a computer to simulate that. You can basically figure out the entire bounded space of 10 to the 33 molecules. One of you could figure out a solution to a rare disease. That's a $10 to $20 billion payoff per rare disease. It's worth your time. Partner up with somebody in the CS department and go figure out how to tackle that problem. Before it would cost you millions of dollars in power and compute. Today it costs you nothing. And then guys like us will basically feed that engine. We'll pay you to go and solve those things. On the energy side, there's going to be all of this stuff that happens when basically everybody has a little, nuclear fusion reactor on their roof, which, by the way, is not an actual reactor. It's just a solar panel that collects energy from the true nuclear reactor in the sky, which is the sun. And you store it in your wall, and now you can do whatever you want, right? Do you see any country trudging into any other country to fight over oil when you have zero-cost energy? Just think about it. No. So you're going to rip apart and turn over trillions and trillions of dollars of the world economy. Your job is to get close enough to it to just grab a few of those shekels for yourself, put it in your pocket, and you won.
Following the definition of the industries that have his interest, Chamath has given a single example, defining one of the many opportunities and the rewards for providing such a solution. Next, he explains that he's not just recommending these spheres, he will be actively participating in these sectors. He also explains that his opinion of these industries is bolstered by the fact that, arguably for the first time in history, the government is actively incentivizing development in these spheres.
I will be spending all of my time over the next 20 years on these two problems that I just told you guys about. And so, if there's camaraderie here, because you can always find me to find support, but that's where I'm going to direct this fire hose. these energy generation problems, these compute problems, these life sciences problems, there are probably no bigger things to work on. Government spending trillions of dollars to create these two boundary conditions for you. You need to understand them and take advantage of it. You will make trillions distributed across all of you. That is where to spend your time. That is where I will spend my time. That is what my spidey senses tell me is the greatest opportunity of my investing career. And I've never felt this way before. I didn't even feel this way about Bitcoin. You know, and I was the guy that owned 5% of these things in 2011. My dollar cost average was like $90 or $100. Even when I knew that that was going to win, I'm telling you that that is going to pale in comparison to this. I think that these next 15 to 20 years, it's pure alpha. I mean, honestly, it's like money will be falling from the sky. I'll give you a different example. Like if you were to go and start a green energy business, a green hydrogen business today, because of the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, you really don't even have to calculate gross margin. The government is literally paying you to make green hydrogen. Like, you know, it's the craziest thing. Your gross margin is going to be more than 100%. Have you ever heard of such a thing? So it's like, why wouldn't you go and find some chemist and just go and figure out how to basically make green hydrogen? And you'll print money. And then you can direct that money to other things and you can start to layer in your view of the world. So there's just all these crazy opportunities, I think, for the next 20 years that are utterly low-hanging fruit that nobody's looking at.
So far, Chamath has spoken extensively on computing and energy and all the factors at play, enabling it to be the greatest financial opportunity of his lifetime. Chamath, in the same interview, explained that aside technology stocks, most other sectors have companies doing the exact same thing. He cites the example of the aviation industry and explains that any two key players in this sphere are indistinguishable from one another. In sharp contrast to this, the technology industry is extremely innovative. Combine this with the innovations in computation and energy, Chamath is convinced that the future will revolve around these things, and that's why he recommends focusing on them whether you're an investor or innovator. In fact, he's convinced that the opportunities currently available are superior to buying Bitcoin in 2012. To close, he touches on cryptocurrency and blockchain tech.
Where do you see Web3 and kind of the blockchain industry evolving over the next couple of decades?
Good question. It has nothing to do with crypto. I think the really interesting thing that's happening in Web3 is a completely federated rebuild of all of the internet infrastructure of Web2. So think AWS, totally distributed. Think GCP, totally distributed. Azure, totally distributed. So, you know, RPC infrastructure by company A, database infrastructure company B, you know, simple low-code, no-code ways of basically, you know, stitching all of these things together. I don't know what that means for data center infrastructure or any of this other stuff, but that is what is the most interesting part of Web3. These companies that are building that kind of stuff, unbelievably technical people.
So just to follow up, you think the biggest innovation will have nothing to do with the cryptocurrencies? It will just be in decentralization
right now.
Infrastructure?
10, 15 years from now, that'll change. But right now, what I see is that is where the most talented people are building in Web3.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chamath's insights on where the world is headed are deeply profound and have been corroborated by other experts in the field like Raoul Pal. His perspective on cryptocurrency is unique. Unlike most experts, he's not convinced that there's a looming financial crisis that will force us all to move to blockchains. This explains why he's convinced that the sectors that will reward you the most in the next 20-25 years are the computing and energy generation sectors. But what do you think? To see the latest in crypto news, watch this video here.